The family that turned their backs on me, now begging for my help. Growing up in my family, I was always the one who stood in the background. My sister was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in the eyes of my parents, especially my mom. She was adored, showered with praise for every little achievement, while I was just the one who was there, an afterthought. It wasn't just that I wasn't the favorite. It was more than that. My sister had the ability to manipulate situations to her advantage, whether it was being cruel to me or pushing my parents' buttons, and she would always come out unscathed. Meanwhile, I was the one blamed when anything went wrong. If she failed a test, my parents would say it was because I distracted her, even though I had been focused on my own work. If she lost a friend, it was my fault somehow, probably because I said something or did something that caused her to fall out with them. And if she broke something in the house, guess who got the blame? Me. Of course. It was never her fault. She was the perfect child, and I was the problem, the one who always got in the way. My mom would back her up every time. She believed my sister's version of events without question. And me? I was invisible. No matter how much I tried to be perfect, no matter how hard I worked to please them, it was never enough. I kept my grades up, helped out around the house, and stayed quiet when they insulted me, hoping that maybe, just maybe, if I did everything right, they would see me for who I was and love me. But it didn't happen. My sister would be celebrated for things she didn't even try for, and I remained unnoticed, ignored. She was the one who got the attention, and I was just the one who kept the house running in the background. They never acknowledged the sacrifices I made, the things I did for them. I was never a part of their world, only someone who filled a space that didn't really matter. Over time, I started to believe that this was my fate, that I would never be the one they loved, that I would always be the invisible one in the family. I tried to convince myself that it didn't matter, that their treatment of me didn't define me. But deep down, it hurt. It always hurt, and I couldn't stop the feelings of worthlessness that crept in every time I saw how much better they treated my sister. The more I tried to fit in, the more I realized how much I didn't belong. I wasn't the problem. They were. But I couldn't change the fact that I was the one who was invisible, the one who didn't matter. It wasn't one moment that broke me. It was a culmination of years of being ignored, being blamed for things that weren't my fault, and being treated as if I was disposable. But there was one night, one moment, that shattered the illusion that I could ever be a part of my family. My sister had failed another class, and once again, instead of taking responsibility, she blamed me. This time, though, she didn't just accuse me of distracting her. She blamed me for everything that was going wrong in her life. I stood there, trying to keep my composure, but the more she spoke, the more the weight of her words crushed me. She yelled, screamed, pointing at me like I was the source of all her problems. And then came the final blow. She screamed that I had ruined their lives. I stood frozen, not knowing how to react. The words hit harder than anything I had heard in a long time. I wanted to fight back, to defend myself, but I knew it wouldn't matter. It never did. No matter how hard I tried to prove myself, no matter how many times I did what they wanted, I would never be good enough for them. And then, my mom chimed in. "We'd be happier without you," she said. The words were a punch to the gut. I felt the ground beneath me shift. I wasn't just unloved, I was unwanted. I was an inconvenience to them, a burden they wished they could get rid of. For so long, I had tried to make them see me, to make them love me. But this was the moment I realized that nothing I did would ever change their view of me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg for them to take it back. For the first time, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had spent years trying to fit into a family that didn't care about me. But in that moment, I knew I had to walk away. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep hoping that one day, they would see me as I truly was. So I turned around, walked to my room, grabbed a backpack, and packed whatever I could. They didn't stop me. They didn't even look up. As I stepped out into the cold night, I didn't feel the dramatic release I had expected. No tears. No final words. There was nothing but a deep emptiness, a quiet acceptance that this was the end. I wasn't going back. I didn't have a destination. But I knew one thing for sure, I was done being the invisible one. I was done being their scapegoat. The first night away from home was the hardest. I had no plan, no backup, and barely any money to get by. But as much as it terrified me, there was a sense of freedom that came with it. I had no one to answer to. I wasn't being blamed for everything anymore. I wasn't the problem in anyone's eyes. I had nothing, but I had the freedom to finally be myself. I found a cheap motel for the night, paying for the room with the little money I had saved up from tutoring gigs. I remember staring at the bed, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. But instead of lying down to sleep, I sat at the small desk in the room, the dim yellow light flickering above me. I had no idea what to do next. I didn't have a degree, didn't have any connections, and my savings were laughable. But I had something else. I had years of experience tutoring, helping other students with their schoolwork. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn that into something bigger. I spent hours the next day sitting in a small cafe, drinking the cheapest coffee, using their Wi-Fi to apply for every online tutoring job I could find. My rates were low at first, just enough to get noticed. It was hard at first. I lived off instant noodles and cheap groceries, renting a room in a shared apartment with 3 strangers who barely acknowledged me. But every morning, I woke up knowing that no one would yell at me. No one would blame me for their problems. That was enough. Over time, my tutoring gigs started to grow. 1 client became 3, and then 3 turned into 10. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to move into a small studio apartment. It was tiny, barely enough space to stretch out, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had control over my own future. I wasn't anyone's burden. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. I was living for myself. But even though I had moved on, even though I was building a new life, there was still a lingering ache. My family never called. They never checked in. Not on my birthday, not on holidays, not even to see if I was alive. It hurt, but it was the kind of pain that becomes familiar. It was the same old wound that never fully healed. And eventually, I convinced myself that it was fine. If they didn't care, then I shouldn't care either. The first year of my new life felt like a constant struggle. I was building something from nothing, taking every opportunity to learn and grow. I had made a name for myself as a tutor specializing in college entrance exams, but I was still trading time for money. I knew that if I wanted to build something sustainable, I needed to think bigger. I started researching digital marketing, watching hours of YouTube videos, reading articles, and learning everything I could about scaling a business. That's when the idea for an online course hit me. I had the knowledge and experience, and I had already helped countless students. Why not turn my lessons into something bigger? I spent months working on it. Every spare dollar I had went into designing the course, building a website, and running ads. It was a huge risk, but it felt right. At first, Sales were slow. I didn't expect much, but word of mouth started to spread. Students began sharing my methods online, and soon enough, my course exploded. Sales tripled, then quadrupled. Within months, I was making more money than I had ever imagined. I moved into a sleek high-rise apartment, the kind I used to dream about. I traveled, met new people who respected me for who I was, and built friendships that weren't based on obligation or family ties. But despite all of this, my family never reached out. Not a single message. Not even a phone call. They didn't care about me until one morning when I saw 6 missed calls from my mom and 8 from my sister. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. After everything, after years of silence, why were they calling me now? What could they possibly want? The call was almost surreal. My mom's voice trembled when she spoke. "Sweetie, please, we need to talk." She hadn't called me sweetie in years. The fake tenderness stung. I could hear the desperation in her voice, and for a moment, a part of me felt something: satisfaction, rage, confusion. They needed me, but they never cared about me before. My sister was struggling, and they needed money for her tuition. I kept my voice calm as I asked what kind of help they needed. "Money," she blurted out, and I could almost hear her trying to hold back tears. After everything, after years of rejection, they were asking for help. They needed me. It was laughable. It was a bitter reminder of everything they had done to me. I didn't hesitate. "How can you think this is okay?" I shot back. "You rejected me when I needed you most. You were too busy with your golden child." I could hear her voice cracking, pleading for me to help. But I didn't care. I wasn't their solution anymore. Then my sister's voice came through, frantic and panicked. "I know I was horrible to you, but I need your help now. I messed up, okay?" I could feel my anger rise, but I kept it in check. "You can figure it out just like I did," I said coldly. They were silent, and I could feel the weight of the situation. They had made their bed. Now they had to lie in it. I was done. I wasn't going to fix their problems anymore. The phone buzzed again, but I ignored it. They didn't deserve me. They never did.